The United Nations has warned that time is running out to reverse the effects of climate change. In the biggest report of its kind, UN experts say that the world faces irreversible damage unless fossil fuels are phased out by the end of this century. Lisa Holland has the details.
As the world hots up, thousands of scientists have been chronicling just how much time is left if the planet is to be saved from catastrophic change. Their work is being dubbed a climate change Bible, put together to pitch to politicians what action must be taken to protect the fragility of the ecosystem.
This clearly shows that we have a very limited window of opportunity, and I think the global community must look at these numbers and show the resolve by which we can bring about change.
Carbon emissions, mainly from burning coal, oil and gas, are currently rising to record levels, not falling. The report concludes that greener electricity is the key to tackling climate change. It says most of the world's electricity must and can be produced by low-carbon sources by 2050. Renewable energy will have to grow to an 80% share of the power sector, and fossil fuels should be phased out entirely by the next century.
If greenhouse gas emissions continue to rise at the current rate, we face the prospect of a rising global average temperature of about 5 degrees or more by the end of the century, which is something the Earth hasn't seen for tens of millions of years and would completely transform the planet. Sea levels would start rising by several meters. There'd be shifts in extreme weather. It would disrupt the lives of hundreds of millions, if not billions, of people around the world.
At the Eureka Children's Museum in Halifax, they're learning through interactive exhibitions what climate change can mean.
It's usually very cold round here, but lately it feels like it's getting warmer.
And even from a young age, what they can do to help.
If you're not in a room or if you go out, you don't want to leave the telly on or anything because that wastes electricity.
But the children's parents believe it's governments who can make the real difference.
I think it's really important, and if we teach children how to do it, then obviously it has a bigger impact in the future. Although globally is a bit of a different matter because there's a lot of nations that aren't doing their bit.
With the deadline for a global deal just over a year away, the report comes at a critical time for debate on climate change. Its authors say if there is a will, there is a way to safeguard the planet and its inhabitants. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
Well, I'm joined now by Tom Burke, a former advisor to the government on the environment. Good evening to you.
Good evening,
I've lost count of the number of times we've heard this from esteemed scientists around the world, this mantra, we've got to act now on climate change before it's too late. What's different about this time, this report?
I think there are two things that are different about this report. First of all, this report is not just the scientists. It was agreed line by government officials. So this is what the scientists and all the governments in the world are saying is the nature of the problem. And secondly, when you read the report, it's all about what the impacts of climate change will be on human beings. So it's not so much now about what will happen to polar bears or ice sheets or glaciers. It's really about what it will do to agriculture, what it will do to forestry, what it will do to the lives of people living in cities around the world. And that does make it really much more significant politically.
So this summit wants to achieve a legally binding commitment that will curb global warming to the 2 degrees Celsius level. Mainly, well, we need to act now, but the issue is whether or not that's going to be achievable because of the huge goals. It's going to involve cutting emissions by up to 70% by 2050. Is that really achievable? Is that really doable? Are governments around the world going to commit to that?
Well, two questions there. Is it achievable? There's no question that we have the technology and the engineering skills to do it. And also, it's now pretty clear we won't wreck our economy by trying to do it. But you will change the pattern of winners and losers, and that makes a big difference politically. So the real question, as your correspondent said, is not so much whether there's a way, but whether we can assemble the will to do what we know we can do.
And part of that will be changing the proportion of energy from low-carbon sources and shifting it towards wind farms, solar panels, nuclear reactors. That would have to triple or quadruple. It's going to require a huge amount of investment, not just from first world countries, second, third world countries as well. Is there the financial support for it?
I don't think there's a problem with the financial support. I think there's much more a problem with creating the policy regimes that will allow that financial support to flow. We're going to make a lot of this investment anyway to meet the growing energy needs of a population. The choice is whether we do this in a high carbon way or a low carbon way. And that really is the nub of the political choice.
You say there is the financial will. What about countries like China, where there's a huge amount of fossil fuels burnt, as we know, coal, and it's cheap to do that? It's going to cost a lot more money to invest in other infrastructure which aren't based on coal.
Actually, what the IEA showed in a recent report is that because you'd save an enormous amount of money on fossil fuels, it probably is only going to cost you very little extra in order to do what you need to do to deploy the low carbon technologies. And the price of those technologies is falling extraordinarily rapidly. We're now way ahead of where people thought even 3 or 4 years ago we'd be in getting down the cost of solar or wind, the other renewable technologies. So I don't think the economics is really going to be the problem. The problem is going to be that there are very powerful lobbies on the side of the fossil fuel industries and their allies that will try very hard to stop this happening. And that will push huge bills onto all the other businesses, the tourism, agriculture, forestry, property, all sorts of other businesses that right now are not getting much of a say in the debate, but will actually be the industries that pick up a lot of the bill.
Tom Burke, fascinating to talk to you. A lot of challenges ahead, but you do believe it can be done. Thank you. Sport for you in a moment. Tom